chairman of the House Oversight Committee, Kentucky Congressman James Comer. Good morning to you, Mr. Chairman. So first, I want to get your predictions for today. Do you actually think Governor Walz will give you upfront and honest answers to these questions? And what do you want to hear from him?
Well, let's just start from the beginning. This hearing comes after hours and hours and hours of interviews that oversight staff has conducted with dozens of Minnesota whistleblowers. So we have the evidence from the whistleblowers who have come forward, showed email correspondence where they have tried to communicate with Governor Walz and Attorney General Ellison for years about the fraud, yet they continue to turn a blind eye. So there's no doubt from our research, and I hope everyone watches this hearing today, that not only did Governor Walz and Attorney General Ellison know about the fraud, they discouraged and even retaliated against whistleblowers for trying to stop the fraud.
Yeah, and to further your point there, it was back in January when state lawmakers in Minnesota testified that both Governor Walz and AG Ellison, quote, ignored repeated warnings and retaliated against state employees who raised concerns. That seems to be a very big issue, Mr. Chairman. Does that lead to any accountability?
Well, I hope so. We've been told for weeks now that Pam Bondi's Department of Justice is on the ground interviewing specific fraudsters, specific people that created the fake Somali daycares and the other businesses that abused the feeding programs for the children and things like that. Our purpose of our investigation on the Oversight Committee was to determine whether or not Tim Walz and Keith Ellison knew about the fraud. So I feel like with what we're doing today, what we're going to present to the American people, and what Tim Walz and Attorney General Ellison are going to have to answer for today, combined with what hopefully Pam Bondi's Department of Justice is doing on the ground in Minnesota, we're going to see a lot of accountability.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, what do you think is going to come out of all of this? I know one of the things that I've been looking at for years is, will the federal government stop sending out money and then chasing fraud rather than getting ahead of the fraud before the money goes out the door in the first place?
Well, for the first time in the 9.5 years that I've been in Congress, we're actually seeing an administration cut off some types of federal funding to Minnesota. That's what Trump's doing. I think after today, he's going to do more government programs as far as cutting their funding off until Minnesota can right their ship. And right now, nothing's changed. Ever since those videos surfaced and the American people started focusing on Minnesota with the fraud in the daycare centers and the fraud in the Medicaid and the fraud in the feeding programs, nothing has really changed other than President Trump has suspended some payments into Minnesota. I think what you're going to see is more payments suspended in more programs after today, and hopefully the state legislature in Minnesota will rise up and demand accountability.
Mr. Chairman, I want to turn now to another hearing on the horizon. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, you announced on X that Secretary Lutnick has proactively agreed to appear voluntarily. I commend his demonstrated commitment to transparency and appreciate his willingness to engage with the committee. That's what you said on X, and this comes after a lot of scrutiny towards Lutnick, who has ties to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. He's denied any wrongdoing, of course. He has said he has distanced himself even prior to Epstein's 2008 conviction. What are you hoping comes from this?
Well, I appreciate Secretary Lutnick. He called me yesterday and said that he kept reading in the news where people were demanding that he come in front of the Oversight Committee, and he said if I wanted him to come, he would come. And I said, well, we want you to come just to answer some basic questions. Lutnick was a next-door neighbor to Jeffrey Epstein. That's not Lutnick's fault that he was the next door neighbor in New York. But we do know that according to what I've seen on the internet, he did visit the island one time. I think he's admitted that with his family. So we have questions about that. Anyone that ever visited the island, we want them to answer basic questions. Again, I'm not accusing the Secretary of any wrongdoing. I know Democrats are accusing every Republican of wrongdoing, but I appreciate the fact that he's coming in. It took us 7 months to get the Clintons in front of the committee. I think it's going to take us about a week and a half to get Secretary Lutnick in front of the committee.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.